Why your UK salary feels like it's shrinking, even when it's not. You're making more money than ever before, but somehow you're broker than you've ever been. Your paycheck hits your account, and within days it's gone. Rent takes half, groceries cost double. What they did 3 years ago, energy bills are insane. And you're still living paycheck to paycheck, wondering where all the money went. This isn't just you. Millions of people across the UK are experiencing the same thing. Salaries that look decent on paper, but feel worthless in reality. So, what's actually happening here? Why does it feel like your money is disappearing faster than you can earn it? And is there any way out of this mess? Let's break down exactly what's killing UK salaries right now, and why this problem is only getting worse. Here's the brutal truth that nobody wants to admit. UK salaries haven't kept pace with the cost of living for over a decade, and it's not even close. Back in 2008, before the financial crisis, the average UK salary was around £26,000. Today, in 2026, the average is around £33,000. That sounds like progress, right? Wrong. Because while salaries went up by about 27% over that period, the cost of everything else went up way faster. Housing costs have more than doubled in many cities. Energy bills have tripled in some cases. Food prices are up 40 to 50%. And don't even get me started on what's happened to rent. So, yeah, you might be earning £7,000 more per year than someone did in 2008. But your actual purchasing power, what you can actually buy with that money, has gone down significantly. You're earning more, but you're poorer, and that's not a feeling. That's math. Let me put this in perspective with a real example. In 2008, if you were making £26,000 a year in London, you could rent a decent one-bedroom flat for about £800 a month. That's £9,600 a year, which is roughly 37% of your gross income. Not great, but manageable. Today in 2026, if you're making £33,000, that same flat now costs you around £1,800 to £2,000 per month. That's £21,600 to £24,000 per year, which is 65 to 73% of your gross income. You see the problem? Your salary went up 27%, but your rent went up over 100%. The math simply doesn't work anymore. And this isn't just London. Cities like Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, Edinburgh are all seeing similar patterns. Wages are creeping up slowly, while housing costs are sprinting ahead. This is the core issue. Earnings growth has been completely disconnected from cost of living growth. Now let's talk about what's driving this disaster, because it's not just one thing. It's a perfect storm of terrible policies, economic mismanagement, and structural problems that have been building for years. First and foremost is the housing crisis. The UK has failed to build enough homes for decades. Since the 1980s, housing construction has consistently fallen short of population growth. You've got more people chasing fewer homes, which drives prices and rents through the roof. This isn't rocket science. It's basic supply and demand, but successive governments have failed to address it. Planning regulations make it nearly impossible to build new housing quickly. NIMBYism blocks development in areas where it's needed most, and the result is a chronic shortage that keeps getting worse. Young people today are competing for the same housing stock their parents had access to, except now there are way more people and way fewer available properties. It's a rigged game. Second is the productivity problem. UK productivity growth has been stagnant for over 15 years. This is called the productivity puzzle by economists. But there's no puzzle here. The UK has underinvested in infrastructure, technology, skills training, and innovation for decades. Businesses aren't becoming more efficient. Workers aren't producing more value per hour. And as a result, wages can't grow because the underlying economic engine isn't generating enough wealth to support higher pay. Compare this to the United States, where productivity growth has been stronger. American workers produce more value per hour, which allows companies to pay higher wages while still making profits. In the UK, you've got the worst of both worlds. Low productivity growth, meaning companies can't afford big raises combined with high inflation, meaning whatever raises you do get are instantly eaten by rising costs. Third is inflation, and this is the killer. Between 2021 and 2023, the UK experienced some of the highest inflation rates in decades. Energy prices went insane after the Ukraine war started. Food prices spiked due to supply chain disruptions and global commodity price increases, and the Bank of England's response was to raise interest rates, which helped slow inflation but also crushed economic growth and made borrowing more expensive. During this period, wages did go up, but nowhere near fast enough to keep up with inflation. If your salary went up 5%, but inflation was 10%, you effectively took a 5% pay cut. Your nominal salary increased, but your real salary, what that money can actually buy, went down. This happened to millions of people across the UK, and it's why everything feels so much more expensive now. Because it is. Fourth is tax creep. This is a sneaky one that people don't always notice. The UK has something called fiscal drag, where tax thresholds don't rise with inflation. This means as your salary increases to keep up with inflation, you get pushed into higher tax brackets, even though your real purchasing power hasn't actually increased. For example, the personal allowance. The amount you can earn before paying income tax has been frozen at £12,570 since 2021. The higher rate threshold where you start paying 40% tax has been frozen at £50,270. So if you got a raise to keep up with inflation, you might now be paying a higher percentage of your income in taxes without actually being any richer. The government collects more tax revenue, you keep less of your paycheck, and your real income goes down. It's a stealth tax that hits middle earners particularly hard. Now, let's talk about specific sectors because this crisis isn't affecting everyone equally. Public sector workers have been absolutely hammered. Nurses, teachers, police officers, civil servants, these are people doing essential jobs, and their pay has been frozen or capped at below inflation levels for years. The result is that real wages for public sector workers have fallen dramatically. A nurse today earns less in real terms than a nurse did in 2010. Think about that. 15 years of experience, more responsibilities, more pressure, and less actual money. It's no wonder there are constant strikes and recruitment crises in the NHS and education. You can't ask people to accept effective pay cuts year after year and expect them to stick around. Many experienced professionals are leaving public sector jobs for private sector roles, or leaving the UK entirely for better pay in countries like Australia, Canada, or the Middle East. The UK is experiencing a brain drain, and it's entirely self-inflicted. Even in the private sector, things aren't great. Yes, some industries like tech and finance still pay well, but even there the cost of living is eating into salaries. And for everyone else, retail workers, hospitality staff, care workers, warehouse employees, pay is barely above minimum wage, and the minimum wage hasn't kept pace with living costs. The UK minimum wage for workers over 23 is currently £11.44 per hour. If you work full-time, that's about £23,800 a year. Now try living in any UK city on that. It's basically impossible. You're choosing between heating and eating, you're in shared accommodation well into your 30s, you're one unexpected expense away from financial disaster. This is the reality for millions of working people in the UK, and it's getting worse, not better. Here's where it gets really dark. The UK is turning into a low-wage, high-cost economy. This is a death spiral. Businesses can't afford to pay more because productivity is low and competition is fierce. Workers can't afford to live on what they're paid because costs are so high. The result is falling living standards across the board. People are working full-time jobs and still relying on food banks. Families are cutting back on heating in winter because they can't afford energy bills. Young people have given up on ever owning a home and are resigned to renting forever. This isn't some distant dystopia. This is happening right now in 2026 in one of the world's wealthiest countries. The UK has the sixth largest economy in the world, and yet millions of its citizens are struggling to make ends meet. How did it come to this? Let's compare the UK to other countries to see just how bad things have gotten. In the United States, the median household income is around $75,000, which is roughly £58,000. In the UK, the median household income is around £32,000. American households earn nearly double what UK households earn. Now, yes, the US has higher costs in some areas like healthcare, but even accounting for that, Americans generally have significantly more disposable income than Brits. Germany is another useful comparison. Median household income in Germany is around 45,000 euros, or about £38,000, higher than the UK, and with better public services and infrastructure. Even Australia, which has a high cost of living, also has much higher wages. The median Australian household income is around 90,000 Australian dollars, which is about £48,000. Australians earn significantly more than Brits, and while Sydney and Melbourne are expensive, Australian workers generally have much better purchasing power. So, why is the UK falling behind? It comes down to structural economic problems. The UK economy is too dependent on services, particularly financial services in London, and not enough on high productivity manufacturing and technology. The UK underinvests in infrastructure, roads, rail, broadband are all worse than comparable countries. The UK underinvests in education and skills training. The UK has restrictive planning laws that prevent housing construction, and the UK has had political instability and poor economic management for years. Brexit didn't help either. Leaving the EU created trade barriers, labor shortages, and economic uncertainty that have all contributed to slower growth and lower wages. You can argue about whether Brexit was the right decision politically, but economically, it's been a drag on growth and wages. Now, let's talk about housing in more detail because this is the single biggest factor destroying UK living standards. The average house price in the UK is now around £290,000. In London, it's over £500,000. The average salary is £33,000. That means the average house costs nearly 9 times the average salary. Historically, a healthy ratio is about 3 to 4 times salary. The UK is more than double that. This makes homeownership impossible for most young people. Even if you save for years for a deposit, you still can't afford the mortgage payments on a typical salary. So people rent, but rents have gone insane too. The average rent in the UK is now around £12,000 per year. In London, it's over £20,000 per year. If you're earning £33,000 and paying $20,000 in rent, you've got $13,000 left for everything else: tax, food, transport, utilities, clothing, everything. It's not sustainable. And here's the thing, high housing costs don't just hurt renters, they hurt the entire economy. When people spend 60 to 70% of their income on housing, they have no money left to spend on other things. Consumer spending falls, businesses suffer, economic growth slows. High housing costs also make it harder for businesses to attract workers because people can't afford to live near their jobs. This creates labor shortages in expensive cities, which pushes wages up slightly, but not nearly enough to offset the cost of living. It's a vicious cycle, and the UK is stuck in it. The only solution is to build massively more housing, but politically that's almost impossible because homeowners who vote don't want house prices to fall, and developers don't want to flood the market and crash prices, so nothing changes and young people continue to get screwed. Let's talk about what this means for different generations, because the generational divide in the UK is staggering. If you're a baby boomer born between 1946 and 1964, you probably did pretty well. You bought a house for £20,000 in the 1970s. That's now worth £400,000. You had a decent pension. You benefited from free university education. You lived through a period of strong wage growth and economic expansion. Life was good, If you're Generation X born between 1965 and 1980, you probably managed to get on the property ladder in the 1990s or early 2000s before prices went completely insane. It was harder than it was for your parents, but still achievable. You're doing okay. But if you're a millennial born between 1981 and 1996, or Gen Z born after 1997, you're screwed. You graduated into a terrible job market after the 2008 financial crisis, or during the COVID pandemic. You're paying off massive student loans that previous generations didn't have. You're paying rents that eat half your salary. You have no realistic chance of buying a home without massive help from parents. You're earning less in real terms than your parents did at your age, despite being better educated. And you're looking at a future where you'll work longer, retire later, and have a lower standard of living than the generation before you. This is the first time in modern history that a generation is expected to be worse off than their parents, and it's happening in real time in the UK. So, what are the solutions? Well, first and most obviously, the UK needs to build way more housing. We're talking hundreds of thousands of new homes per year for a decade. This means reforming planning laws, overriding NIMBY objections, building on green belt land if necessary, and massively increasing public investment in social housing. Second, the UK needs to invest in productivity, better infrastructure, more training, support for high growth industries like tech and green energy. This will allow wages to rise without triggering inflation. Third, the UK needs tax reform, stop freezing thresholds, make the system more progressive so the wealthy pay more and the middle class gets relief. Fourth, the UK needs to address the public sector pay crisis. You can't run a country when nurses and teachers are using food banks, pay them properly, or watch public services collapse. But here's the harsh reality. None of this is likely to happen anytime soon. Why? Because it requires political courage and long-term thinking, and the UK political system rewards short-term populism and kicking problems down the road. Building more housing is politically toxic because homeowners vote and they don't want their property values to fall. Raising taxes on the wealthy triggers backlash from donors and the media. Investing in infrastructure requires borrowing, which gets attacked as fiscally irresponsible. So politicians do nothing. They make small tweaks around the edges, they announce reviews and consultations, they blame the previous government, and the cycle continues. Meanwhile, ordinary people continue to see their living standards fall, their savings eroded, their futures constrained. Here's the most frustrating part. The UK is a rich country. This isn't some developing nation struggling with poverty. The UK has enormous wealth, world-class universities, a highly educated workforce, strong institutions, the sixth largest economy on earth. The money exists, the resources exist, the talent exists. What's missing is the political will to make the hard choices necessary to fix these problems. Instead, the UK is coasting on past glories while slowly declining. Living standards are falling, infrastructure is crumbling, public services are failing. And this brings us to the final point. What can you do as an individual? Because waiting for the government to fix this is a losing strategy. First, if you're in a low-paying job or industry that's not growing, aggressively upskill and switch sectors, learn coding, get into tech, move into finance, find an industry where wages are actually rising. Second, if you're stuck in an expensive city, consider moving. Yes, London has great jobs, but if your rent is eating 70% of your salary, you're going backwards. Smaller cities like Manchester, Leeds, Glasgow offer better cost of living ratios. UK salaries are under pressure, but this doesn't mean the future is hopeless. Even in a tough economy, opportunities still exist for those who adapt and grow. New industries like tech and green energy are creating better paths forward. With the right skills and smart financial choices, people can still improve their situation. Challenges often push innovation, and economies do recover over time. Younger generations may face obstacles, but they also have more global opportunities than ever before. By staying flexible, learning continuously, and making strategic moves, individuals can stay ahead. The situation is tough right now, but it's not permanent, and there is still a way forward. Thanks for watching.